Okay, good. Then, Evelyn, you would put the next slide, please. Today we will be focusing especially on master's and doctoral study and visiting researcher opportunities in the US. And also we'll talk about how the Fulbright Finland Foundation can help you in your plans related to studying in the US or research visits in the US. We also talk about how to find university options that suit best you academically and financially, and how to apply to US universities. To get a bit grasp on who we are talking today here in this event, could you please type in your chat, in the chat box, the field you represent or the field you would be interested in studying in the US. There is law and neuroscience, business and design, linguistic education, criminology, information systems, music. Wow, really nice. We have really nice variety of different fields. Great, thank you so much. Let's continue with a brief introduction to the Fulbright Finland Foundation. The Fulbright Finland Foundation is a private, independent and non-profit organization with a history that goes back to the 1940s. What we do is promote the exchange of knowledge and expertise between Finland and the United States. We provide grant programs for students, scholars, artists, teachers, and professionals of all backgrounds in the US and Finland for transatlantic mobility. We also support Finnish higher education institutions in internationalization by organizing, for instance, training and study tours for the higher education institution representatives. About our funding, it comes from several different sources, and over 70% of our core funding comes from Finland. Next, we'd like to find out, where did you first find out about Fulbright or the Fulbright Finland Foundation? You can write down again your answer in the chat box. How did you find about Fulbright? Where did you learn about it, or the Fulbright Finland Foundation? School email, good, it works. Colleagues, friends. Yeah, friends and university emails, intranets. Great, thank you so much. Okay, a little bit more about our scholarship programs. Most of our programs are part of the Fulbright, Global Fulbright program, which operates in 160 different countries around the world. The Fulbright Grant Program was established after the Second World War in the United States, originally as a peace program to increase mutual understanding between people from different countries. What then makes our scholarship programs different or unique, or how the Fulbright Finland Foundation grants differ from the grants that are awarded by other foundations? As you can see, we are here talking about grant programs. We are not just talking about granting scholarships or money. The grant is only one part of the scholarship program. Our foundation's grant recipients are offered a variety of free additional benefits and support services in addition to the grant. You get help in the US university application process, including support for locating suitable universities with funding opportunities. You get support and guidance when preparing to move to the US or Finland, and many other additional benefits that we soon be talking more about. Another special feature that we have in our grant programs is that we look for people who are interested in cultural exchange and learning about new environments and getting to know another country and sharing one's own culture. So the program is also a cultural exchange program, and the grantees are referred to as ambassadors. Grantees are ambassadors of Finland, US, if they're coming from US to Finland, their home institution, and the foundation. And the grantees promote Finland, United States connections as citizen ambassadors. We also seek people who have an interest in acting as change agents in their own field, who want to bring about changes and develop or advance their own professional or scientific field, or who are motivated to work towards finding solutions to societal or national or international challenges. Let's take a closer look at the grant program benefits and services. The overall package we provide for the scholarship recipients include, as mentioned, help in locating suitable US universities from different parts of the US that also provide funding to help cover your study costs. You also get support in the actual university application process if you participate in the placement service. Grantees and accompanying family members are offered free of charge visa and help in visa application process. Grantees get extensive orientation training before departing US. The training includes online materials, virtual meetings, and orientation day in Helsinki. And all grantees have a designated contact person in our office, also a contact person through our US partner in the US, and they also receive support from the program alumni. And as part of the program, you get access to the global multi-professional Fulbright network that enables you to develop your own professional and international contacts. In addition, the Fulbright program gives you networking opportunities, for example, through orientation courses in the United States before you would start your grant term there. There are these gateway orientations that where grantees meet other Fulbright grantees from different parts of the world who have arrived to the US to do their Fulbright term there. And in these orientation events in the US, your accommodation and meals are also covered. And during the academic year, you're also invited to different Fulbright events, depending a little bit on your location, how active these events are. In this slide, you can see, if we go one slide forward, you can see some encounters that our Finnish grantees have had in the US with the US alumni of the grant program during their time during their grant term in different parts of the US. These alumni are previously our previous grantees who've been in Finland on a Fulbright grant and who want to support and meet the Finnish grantees that have arrived in the US. When talking about the program benefits, it should also be mentioned that the Fulbright program is an internationally known and respected exchange program with a long history. And therefore, the Fulbright status can also help those participating in the program by opening doors, for instance. And finally, there is a lot of alumni activities and the alumni network that is a benefit that we'd like to highlight here. But next, I'd like to invite our 3 alumni to join to the discussion, alumni and current student grantees. We have Irina Wang, Mira Hänninen, and Maija Lähteenkorva. They will tell us about their own experiences as a grantee in the Fulbright program. I would like to first ask the grantees to introduce themselves. What's your field? Where did you do your Fulbright term, or where you are currently doing it, and what you're doing there? Could you, Maija, start?
Hi everyone, my name is Maija Lähteenkorva and I'm a PhD student at University of Jyväskylä School of Business and Economics. My discipline is corporate environmental management, and I'm currently doing a 12-month research visit at Emory University Business School in Atlanta. So I'm doing 12-month research, and my research is on this business movement that started here in the US called B Corp movement. So I'm doing research on that. And I'm currently still in Atlanta up until end of July.
Great, thank you, Maija. Mira, can you go next?
Hi, my name is Mira Hänninen. I studied in the US last year. My background is in law, so I worked as a lawyer already in Finland. And then I pursued Master of Laws degree, which is 1-year degree at Harvard University. And I returned to Finland last fall.
Thank you. And Irina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Irina. I am currently based at the University of Lapland's Arctic Center. I'm in design, and I'm working with the researchers here and the Sami reindeer herders as well. And then I've also split my grant between Rovaniemi and Helsinki. So my other affiliation is at Aalto, and specifically their design department's Notice Sustainability Research Group.
Great. Thank you. Could you, Irina, continue? What aspects of the Fulbright program have been the most important for you, and why you would recommend applying to the program?
Oh, so many things. First and foremost, because my research is concerned with co-design and indigeneity, it's super, super important for me to be close in geographically in contact with the people that I'm working with to make that collaboration more balanced and equal rather than sort of me directing something from afar. And so that's been absolutely crucial to have the opportunity to actually live here, and for an amount of time that, it can always be longer, right? But 10 months is a very decent chunk of time that I otherwise would very much struggle to procure on my own. So having that structure there and the time and the proximity has been super important.
Great, thank you. How about Maija and Mira? Maija, you want to go first?
Yeah. So reason why I wanted to do my research visit in the US was because my focus is on this social movement that was started here in the US, and it's only kind of being born or being developed in Finland. So this was a great opportunity to study this social movement here in the US. But particularly why I chose to apply for Fulbright grant was I knew from my supervisor, who's also been a Fulbright grantee, that there's this great support network that Fulbright provides before you go to the US, during your time in the US, and even afterwards, which I'm also looking forward to, which has helped me enormously because it has made basically my stay easy. It's so like straightforward. You get provided all the steps, what you have to do, always get email reminders. It's been very easy. So that has been the biggest benefit. And also the other thing is, once I arrived here in the US, I realized that Fulbright is a very known network. So even people outside of university knows what Fulbright is. So it's been very easy to introduce myself when I mentioned Fulbright. They're like, oh my God, you're Fulbrighter. So it has tremendous benefits in that sense. So I'm very happy that I can call myself a Fulbrighter.
Yes, I can only echo the other speakers. I completely agree with both of you. And I think for me personally, the highest or biggest benefit of the Fulbright program was definitely the people that I met during the program. I think that if I weren't a Fulbright grantee, I would probably have only met mostly lawyers or law students at my university. But through Fulbright, I was also able to meet people from other fields, perhaps get other perspectives. And I also really enjoyed meeting the Fulbright alumni in the United States and hearing about their experiences in Finland. And then they were also showing me around in Boston. So I really appreciated that.
Great. Wonderful. Let's move with the program. We'll soon hear more about our grantees and alumni. Thank you for now. We can now take a closer look at the opportunities for master's and doctoral students in the US and what kind of scholarship programs the Fulbright Finland Foundation offers. The US has a really large number of colleges and universities. There are more than 4,000 institutions, and in around 2,000 you can complete graduate level studies, that is master's and doctoral level studies. And if you compare to Finland, there is almost 40 universities only, including universities and University of Applied Sciences. So there's a huge difference, and finding the right university match for yourself is something where you want to really put effort into when you are heading to the US, because there are so many different options. In the US, you have public and private universities. There are very different institutions concerning their size. There are really small and really big universities, small, big campuses. Some campuses are like small towns or cities with all the cultural and sports offerings and entertainment, dining and other services. So that's a very different type of environment. And some campuses are located in metropolitan areas in big cities, and some are in smaller towns with a few thousand inhabitants only. And other universities can have very strong emphasis on research, while others may have more emphasis on teaching. Number of students in classes or lecture halls may vary very strongly between universities and subjects. Some have a lot of group study and others have more mass lectures. So these are things you want to take into account when you are looking for different university options for you. And when we talk about higher education institutions in the US, you hear about colleges, universities, institutes, community college, junior college, and so forth. The difference between university and college is not always very clear. Colleges are usually the ones that offer bachelor's degrees and some also master's degrees. And universities often offer master's and doctoral programs in addition to bachelor's degrees. And often colleges can be more teaching oriented and universities more research oriented. But really the terminology doesn't always go together like this. There are also colleges where you can do doctorate and vice versa. And then about the junior and community colleges, in those you can complete the general studies part of a bachelor's degree, so a 2-year associate degree. What are then your opportunities in the US? If you want to complete a full degree in a US university, you can often receive funding for your study expenses from the university. In the US, you receive high quality education. You have truly wide variety of programs to select from, and some programs which you don't find in Finland at all, or for instance, in a graduate level. Then there might, or the universities typically offer very good services for international students, support services, and also you get to experience the unique campus culture of a US university in its wide scope. These are some factors that are kind of these appealing factors of US higher education institutions. And if you decide to apply for the Fulbright program, as mentioned, you also get help in finding suitable universities that also provide financial support for your studies, and you get help in the application process. This service is really valuable service when you come from a different university system. This placement service eases your workload and provides you with professional guidance and support from an expert who knows the US universities and application process in the particular field which you are interested in. And for example, you get feedback on your university applications in this through this service. Your application papers are sent to the universities on your behalf, and you get information from which universities you could get the best funding for your studies. in the US. The experts have information, for instance, which universities have a history of awarding good funding packages for international students. And this service through the Fulbright program also covers your university application fees and fees related to the evaluation of your Finnish certificates, transcripts, and diplomas, something that US universities typically require from international students. Currently, we have 4 programs open through our foundation for master's and doctoral studies, and the deadline is in May 16 this year, and this application cycle now concerns the 24-25 academic year, so starting studies or research visit in the US fall 24. Here you can see the names of the 4 different grant categories. The Eatman Foundation sponsored grants are targeted for master's studies in a US university, and for those who are from Pirkanmaa region or who have graduated from a high school in Pirkanmaa region but can be studying bachelor's degree in some other city or area. And the maximum grant here is $140,000. Then there is the Fulbright Technology Industries of Finland grant, which is for master's and doctoral level studies and research visits for 1 academic year in the US and maximum for $50,000. Then Kaute, Fulbright Kaute Foundation Award is for doctoral research visits in the US for 1 academic year now in this application cycle. And then we have the ASA Fulbright Graduate Grant Program, which is available for all fields. This Kaute Award is for technology, economics, and business. And the ASA Fulbright Graduate Grant is for all fields. And then next fall, there are 3 programs opening also for graduate studies. Those are the ones listed here in this slide. So there's an opportunity to work as a teaching assistant for US students interested in Finnish language and culture. That's a 1 program opening next fall. And then we have also for doctoral research visits, a program opening next fall for 6 to 12 months visits, and also another short-term or 1 short-term program for doctoral students on certain thematic areas. This program usually focuses on each year to certain thematic areas. Then if we take a look at the evaluation criteria a little bit, first of all, you can find the evaluation criteria that the Fulbright Finland Foundation uses in grant selections on our website under each grant category. And to put it short, our approach in the evaluation is holistic. Like in the US universities, we don't only look at the academic part or how successful you've been in your studies earlier or research, but we also pay attention to, for example, to your motivation for applying specifically for the Fulbright Finland Foundation programs and the potential impact of your plans. Here in this next slide, you'll see some useful links. You can take a look at them when you get the slides afterwards from us. And now we would have an opportunity to again hear from our students and alumni. So we'll continue with Mira and Irina and Maija. I would like to ask now, how would you describe your experience as a student or student researcher in a US university? Or this now particularly goes to Mira and Maija, because they are or have been studying or doing research visit in the US. Could you start, Mira, with this?
Yes, sure. I would describe it as a lot more demanding and more active and dynamic than in Finland, perhaps. I was really used to mass lectures in Finland, and we didn't have that many active participation in classes. But then when I studied at Harvard, we did have a lot of active discussion and participation, and basically the entire structure of studies was different, so that we first had the readings for the classes, and then in the classes we would go deeper and discuss the topic further. And I also found that we didn't really just study the theory, but we were also discussing why, for example, law is the way that it is. And we were digging deeper into why it has been developed in a particular way and who does it benefit, or how else could it be as well. So all in all, I would say that it was a lot more demanding, but also rewarding.
Great, thank you for sharing those ideas or thoughts. Then Maija, what would you say?
From my perspective, because I've only been doing research here, but I've been able to audit my host courses, and what I particularly enjoy and have learned that there is a kind of different dynamic when it comes to teacher-student relationship. It's more informal, it's very open. For example, in here, it's very normal for like a professor or teacher to have like these office hours, and students actually use it. They go into the professors or teachers basically office to talk about anything related to course or propose new articles that they've read about it or anything else. And it's very active, and you know, like in Finland, we used to communicate through emails, and here it's more face-to-face, which I really enjoy. And plus I really enjoy the university culture where, for example, students have their own happy hours every Thursday in front of the business school outside, and it's like teachers and students like mingling every week, and it's just it's not as you know, separate teachers and then students. It's all kind of like more informal, which I really enjoy. From like a PhD perspective, what I've learned by interacting with the PhD students here and participating their kind of study structure is that they're very future oriented, which I really enjoy. They already start at their first year talking about the job market when they graduate, how they're gonna, everything's kind of preparing you for the future, which is very nice. I've learned a lot in the last 7 months about just going into the job market after you finish your PhD, what you should do, how you should do it. And the university offers you opportunities to network, to build your network during your PhD studies. I think this is also similar with master degrees and others as well, is that they provide you these opportunities to build your network already during your studies. So you don't have to do it on your own. So that has been very insightful in that sense.
Great, thank you, Maija. Very good points. Thank you so much. Can you next tell us what was your process like when you were looking for suitable institution or universities, and that then you ended up with one institution that where you went? Can you talk about the process a bit? Irina, you want to start about your experience?
Sure. I can also build off of what Maija was saying in the sense that those attributes that vary in terms of like how future oriented your course might be versus, you know, how professionally oriented versus theoretically oriented. Those are things that depend on the structure and the philosophy of each program at each school. So I would definitely suggest starting there in terms of comparing and contrasting different courses. And it's, for example, my experience in applying to grad schools in the US, I knew that I wanted to make a sort of career pivot in the design world. And at the time I was also living outside of the United States, so a little similar to you all perhaps. And I didn't know exactly what the degree would be called. It's kind of a weird. So for example, I wanted to study systems design, but there's not really that much of a systems design academic industry, if you will. And so I had to look at adjacent fields that were tailoring their programs slowly towards including topics about systems design. So it actually looked like applying to programs that had different degree names altogether. And it really depended on doing research on the philosophy of the course and perhaps even the head professors and where they came from and what their design philosophy was like. So I'm not sure if that applies a lot to topics like law or computer science, but definitely for music and design and humanities, I would suggest looking at each course individually rather than sort of subject-based explorations. And at each university, it'll differ.
Right, very good points. Yeah, Mira, go ahead.
Yeah, I could also continue from here. I would say that it does apply also to law, at least to some degree or extent. What I found and what was actually surprising to me is that the law schools may have very different focus areas. So for example, some university might be more focused on law and economics or human rights or dispute resolution, etc. So it's definitely worth checking that out. And what I did, I also checked what kind of professors there are, what kind of courses there are available. I think that Carolina already mentioned very good things earlier, what to focus on when you're doing your research and trying to choose between different universities. I think it's also very good to keep in mind that the courses may change or that you might not be able to take all the courses that you wanted to. Some courses might be very, very popular and it's difficult to enroll. But in any case, just trying to see in general what kind of university that is, what are they most focused on, in which area do they have their best professors. And then also something that I considered because I knew that I was coming back to Finland is that there are tons of very good universities in the United States, but not all of them have very strong reputation in Europe, unfortunately. So some universities in the US do a lot more branding in Europe than others. So that was also a very important consideration for myself, that I want to have very good quality of teaching, but then also I want to go to a university that is also recognized in Finland because I came back.
Great, thank you, Mira. Maya, you want to share your story? How did you ended up at Emory?
Yeah, so I guess mine is a bit different because I applied for like a research visit. So I would directly contact the professor who I'm interested in collaborating with. In my case, because it was right after COVID, what COVID kind of created was like a bottleneck. So there was a lot of visiting researchers who basically had to postpone their research visit during COVID, which kind of created that what happened is that the first and second and the third choice that I had already had their full capacity in terms of like visiting researchers. So I don't know if that's still the case, particularly in these more prominent or known universities, which usually get a lot of researchers. But in my case, this actually was a benefit for me because I ended up going to the university which was right, like the perfect fit for me. Plus, I think it's important to consider is that in the US, there's a lot of good, what they call R1 universities, which are top universities in research. They might not be as known in Europe, maybe because of the branding perspective, but I think it's important to look in because there's a lot of benefits in going to these top research universities, particularly if you're doing your research visit, because you get all the benefits and you get top researchers. For example, at Emory University, which is not very known maybe in Finland, they have professors and researchers who are coming from Stanford, from Yale. So but we perhaps don't really know about this university as much in Europe as we know about Stanford or Harvard and Yale. So I think that's important when you do your research, you kind of dig deeper and understand the differences between universities in the US, because there's a lot of, especially if you look at it from the research perspective, there are a lot of like different aspects that you have to look into. And of course, from my perspective as well, is you have to remember that, you know, if you go to like Stanford, that means you go to a city that's way more expensive, which means you're probably going to have to apply for more funding. Sometimes it's also important to kind of like do the kind of like a cost analysis and see that it might actually be better idea to go to this other university because the living costs are way lower, which will just make your life easier because you don't have to apply for a lot of extra funding to be able to do your research visits. For example, for me here living in Atlanta, it's been perfect because the living cost and rent and those things are a lot cheaper. And then the other fact is that I don't have to pay anything during my research visit to the university. Whereas if I would have gone to Stanford, I would have had to pay different admin fees, or me just being there and doing research means a lot of like thousands of dollars of paying to the university. Whereas in here, I get everything for free and I still get access to all the things that PhD students get that are enrolled in the university. So those are kind of like the benefits also that you need to kind of weigh in when you choose your university.
Thanks, Maya, for raising that point. I totally agree with the cost perspective as well. It's also something to take into consideration. And then also, as I think Carolina already mentioned, many universities also provide grants for their students. So it's also something that you can take into consideration when you're choosing between universities, what kind of financial grants or support they might offer you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I could quickly add as well, first of all, I find it funny that Emory is not as well known in Finland because we call it the Harvard of the South. So it's you're in very good hands, as you already know. I think the cost thing I would echo, quality of life for choosing where the city is that you're especially because this is also a cultural exchange aspect where you're getting to know the United States in a way and the different landscapes. Like it's dramatically different depending on what part of the United States you go to, how big your city or your town is, how close you are to nature, all of these things. And when I chose to attend RISD, it was also a choice based on you know, RISD and Brown University have a really good relationship. So having that like double academic bubble in a town that is otherwise pretty small, it made me much more able to focus. I did my undergrad in London and that was amazing, but it was also crazy because the distractions were so high and I learned a lot from just living in a big city. But for my grad school experience, when I was applying to places, I knew that I wanted to focus more on my research and sort of put my head down and be in a place that was perhaps less like teeming with other things going on all the time. So I think that's a really important thing to consider. Cost-wise, I think, I guess I'll speak to my experience here in Finland. So even between Helsinki and Rovaniemi, it's been a massive difference because the smaller things that I would suggest you look into, I'm not sure exactly how the housing would work, but for me in Finland, for example, I don't qualify for student housing in Helsinki, but I do in Rovaniemi, which is like, you know, that makes a huge chunk of the stipend go a lot further in different situations. So I would look at housing in each of your situations. If you're choosing between schools, I think that one makes immediately a huge difference to your budget.
Yeah. Excellent, great, thank you so much. These have been really truly excellent kind of tips and thoughts that you've been sharing. So thank you so much. Now I will hand it to my colleague Ling. She will be going over the graduate school application process with you in a more detail, and you will be hearing more from our students and grantees still soon, and alumni.
Thank you, Carolina. So let's get to the nitty-gritty parts of applying to a university. And we will look from the US perspective so that you can get into a university. That's the most important point, right? So like my colleague Carolina has mentioned, actually, and also our Fulbrighters have mentioned as well, it's very important to research thoroughly to check different kind of universities because there may be a hidden gem among all the whole long list. And it is before applying, it is very important to have a really balanced application plan, which means you narrowed from well, Carolina has mentioned, it's a very wild landscape over there. So you need to do your research, find your suitable field, find a suitable match, and then narrow it down. And we recommend if you are degree seeking students, if you're looking for a master degree in the US, maybe at least 4 universities to apply for, and for doctoral students, maybe 5. And it's always good to have like a list of your desired university, and then which also includes some safer options, because every university, every year, their strategy, their goal, they may change. And so there are many factors behind, besides only your academic merits. So this is something very important. And also when we talk about the balanced application plan, the prep stage is also very important, like how much timing I'm investing. But we will look into the required documents in a bit, and so you will have a sense of timing as well. So before going to the nitty-gritty details, not yet, but we'll look at the wider landscape again. So for graduate application or admission, there are many factors. So on the graduate school level, they set the general standard, like minimum requirements, minimum test score. So, okay, you're going for an LLM, so you must have documents A, B, C, or maybe certain tests. But then on the department's level, it is a little bit different, because like professors and teachers, they will select the candidates into the program, and it's but there are sometimes things, this may happen, that maybe an application is share across the department if they see the candidates maybe a better fit in another program. So this may be a possibility, but you can see it over here, like it is on the level of professors and teachers. So they know their program really well, and they know what they are seeking for. But of course, like at the university, there's always the international office or international students or scholar services. So their supporting role over here is to help the admission process in terms of credential evaluation, degree equivalence, because many international students apply for a US program. So as said, there are many factors which may vary every year behind the admission process, behind the scene. And of course, once admitted, international office usually provides orientation and offer guidance for international students on practical matters as well. But it's always good to keep in mind, like from the university landscape, many options to choose from, and then also behind the scene, what's going on as well. And now we will zoom in a little bit. What are typical requirements for admission to our graduate degree program? I can say shortly that our Fulbright application is very similar to a US, an application for a graduate program to the US. And you can read these on your own later on from our website as well, because these, as I said, these are very similar. But then what I want to emphasize here on is the application essay, because it weighs quite a lot in an application. It's usually a research or a study objective or personal statements. And each type of document has a slight different approach of writing. So treat this essay as an introduction to the faculty members, and each institution will likely provide you their own prompts or questions or guidelines actually. So make sure your essay really reflects on your overall goal and address everything as of you. Why I say this is a very important component, it's because many US universities and institutions, they are not only looking for good grades, they are really looking beyond your academic merits, like what is your motivation and how can these candidates be suitable in our whole environment, our community as well. So they are really looking like for your personal motivation and maybe your future potential and contribution as well. And 3 recommendation letters is quite a typical requirements across grad schools in the US. Read the instructions carefully, and also in cases, actually applicants do not even see the recommendation letters. It is just a norm, a common practice in the US to ensure the objectivity of the recommendation. And we will go to the test score a little bit in a moment. But also, it's maybe common that US universities will ask for medical documents at some point. It is quite a common thing, as well as funding plans. So it is important that you plan everything thoroughly, carefully. And I'm not going to go through the tests, but I just want to talk about like TOEFL. Commonly speaking, it's quite easy for Finnish students. But of course, we still recommend you to prepare it. It's a language test, include reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And then there's the GRE. So this is actually a more demanding one, and which many Finnish students recommend practicing it thoroughly. So we really recommend you to spare enough time. There are 3 parts: analytical writing, verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning. And so there's also the GMAT, Graduate Management Admission Test, usually for MBA and business programs. And same as GRE, like better prepare in advance. But anyways, let's move to, let's seek some tips from our Fulbrighters. So please, our Fulbrighters, what are your 3 most important tips for the application process specifically?
I can go first, even though I have to say that it's pretty difficult to go after you, because I think you already gave a lot of very good tips. But something that I consider very important, of course, I can't really know what makes the change or what is the basis for their decisions. But I find it super important that in your personal statement or overall in your application, you create a very coherent narrative and very clear and logical narrative about yourself. So where do you come from? Why are you applying to that specific university and to those specific studies? What do you look forward to getting out of there? And how are you going to use that in the future? So what are you going to do after the studies? Because I believe that the universities would like to have people or students who actually take the most out of the studies and will use that knowledge to do something afterwards. So it's very important to explain. And also, as Ling mentioned, apart from the academic merits, they are very interested in you as a person and all the different sides of you. So don't hesitate to bring any details or any personal information about yourself that you may want to share with the university. And then my second tip that would go well with this first one is that try to have recommendation letters from people who actually know you and know this narrative of yours, so that your entire application is coherent. I think that many times people are thinking about the titles or the merits of the recommendation letters or the people writing the recommendation letters, but I think that it's even more important what they are saying in their letters, so that it really reflects what you want to say in your application as well. And then finally, what was already mentioned here, just apply to many universities. Don't think that you will get into one specific university. Instead, you want to keep your options open and you want to receive offers from different universities and be able to choose later on what is the university where you want to go ultimately. But then also, on the other hand, don't be too worried about not getting into any university. I'm sure that you all are very good candidates, so you don't have to worry too much about that, but just be realistic and apply to sufficiently many universities. Those would be my tips.
Thank you for your firsthand experience and insights. It seems like me. Yes, go ahead, Maya.
Yeah, I can go. Okay, so well, since the application process for going to research visit is a bit more, I'd say, simple in terms of just sending an email to the potential professor. So I guess my tips are more for the Fulbright application. I think one of the biggest tips that I can give, which I also try to remember when I was doing my application, is that not think about Fulbright as just like a monetary scholarship, but think about it as you become a member of a community if you get this scholarship. So how does this kind of Fulbright community will benefit you before, during, and but also after? So think about it more like a wider lens. So when you kind of talk about your motivations and why specifically you want to get the Fulbright scholarship, so think about it how the Fulbright will kind of benefit you in the future as well, and how you're going to use it in the future, and so forth. I guess the second one is also to remember, although, the application, it feels like, you're focusing on just getting the scholarship and then getting into university and then going to the US. But I think it's also important to remember that you have that it's also good to mention what you're going to do afterwards. Once you come back to Finland, which most cases, most of us will come back home, what we're going to do with this all is in knowledge that you acquired, or the networks, or potential new collaboration projects, or so forth. So what you're going to do with this knowledge or skills that you've acquired. And I guess the third one is that try to make sure that you also show in your application that you have you can be adaptable in terms of because most likely plans will change during the process. So make sure you can show that, you can adapt to changes, and you have that resistance and adaptability to do that, because you're going to need that, because things are going to change and it's going to be a long process. And it's important to also show that, you might have that one university you really want to go, but it might be that you don't get in. So you have to kind of change your mindset. So if you already show that during your application period that you have that kind of skills, it's also a very good positive thing to show.
Thank you, Maya. How about Irina? Do you have any last add-ons?
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good. I would have said some version of that anyway. I guess to echo the importance of finding the right balance between feasibility and flexibility was super important. It seemed specifically for the Fulbright portion of the application. I would say in general, whether it's for the Fulbright part or the university application part, don't be afraid to send cold emails. Just send tons of emails. For me, it was important because it's you have this, if you think about it too much before acting, basically, then you build up all these ideas of exactly what you need, what you think is available. And then, you're sort of limited in that way. But I think the earlier you reach out and the more often you reach out, the more likely it is that you build a more realistic idea of what kind of collaborations are possible and what kinds of people are more responsive or less responsive, because ultimately you want to end up in an affiliate relationship or a department in a university where it's really an active collaboration and a relationship that you develop from both sides, right? So yeah, I would really recommend getting in touch with actual humans instead of just reading the lists of the top 10 law departments in the South or whatever. That's really important. And a more technical tip I would give is when asking for recommendation letters, I think what I've found is that it helps the writer of the letter to also have a really good idea of exactly what you would like them to touch on. Not that you're writing it for them, but to say I think that I would love your recommendation in particular because you knew my professional side really well for these years when we worked on this project, and I would love to highlight that portion of my personality or my competence to the department head of this research program. So giving your recommendation letter writers more specific content for how you think they could help you, I think helps everybody involved. So yeah, that's it from me.
Hey, that's really good tips. Thank you very much for sharing. And as you have heard how our Fulbrighters share their experiences, basically application all applicants tailor makes their application to the specific graduate program. Everything is fine-tuned, fine-tweaked, and it is very personalized for a specific program based on the mission, the direction of the program, and also your own motivation as well. So it's really important. Anyways, we will move forward to, since we have heard from the students' perspective, and actually our professors are here in this room, so we will, I know today we are running a little bit tight on schedule, but we will put everything Q&A session at the end after the panel discussion, but maybe actually maybe the professors may answer your questions through the discussion. And also, of course, we will also send out all your questions in the chat. Feel free to type there, and then we will definitely go through them and we will reply you in a written form if we cannot do it in verbal formats today. And so I would like to welcome you. Let me, since I'm the tech, spare me 1 second. Talking and clicking at the same time. So now we are here. So welcome. Today we have 2 US professors currently actually in Finland right now, and they are very kind to share their tips from the other end of the spectrum. So William Collins and Jean Sjöstrand, please introduce yourself, and actually maybe it would be fun for students, Finnish students, to learn about your study path as well. So please introduce yourself and share a little bit of your own study path.
Will, you can go first.
Oh, okay. So I'm Will Collins, Associate Professor of Civil Engineering at the University of Kansas. I am here in Finland right now on a Fulbright Fellowship working at VTT, the Technical Research Center of Finland. And I'm actually a civil engineer, and I'm working with mechanical engineers here because the type of research that I do is on fracture mechanics, so how materials break. Normally, as a civil engineer, I apply this to buildings and bridges, but here I'm working with mechanical engineering colleagues on nuclear reactors and materials used there. So my study path, I wanted to be an engineer for a long time, even though I didn't really know what that meant. And I went to school, got an engineering degree, and then worked for a few years in industry in the construction side of civil engineering before I went back to grad school. And it was in grad school where I really fell in love with the idea of teaching and the idea of doing research. And those 2 things combined were just kind of a really exciting thing for me to think about. I wasn't going to be doing the same thing every single day for the rest of my life. It was always going to be something new. And that's what led me towards getting a PhD and into academia. And so that's kind of the quick version of my study path.
Which universities you participated or you did your degrees?
So I did all my degrees at the same school. I went to Virginia Tech. And so I did my undergrad there and then worked for a few years and then went back and did my master's and PhD there. And then I did a postdoc at Purdue University before getting the job at the University of Kansas.
Great.
Thank you. So it seems like really before grad school, you did not consider teaching at all.
No, I didn't. And so actually, it's funny. My wife's over here working, but we were married before I went back to school for grad school. And when I went back, I said, I'm just going to get a master's degree. It'll open up more job opportunities for me. And it was probably it was my first semester in my master's program. We were studying one night for a test, and I figured out this concept. I was studying with some friends, and I got up on the board and was writing things out, and I realized, man, this is exciting, helping other people figure this out. And I came home and told my wife, I think maybe I want to get a PhD. And she just rolled her eyes, because that's more and more years of study when we thought it was going to be a quick 2 years and get a better job kind of thing.
And now it's a life commitment, becoming professor.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Will. That's very nice to hear your story. How about Jean?
Yes, well, my trajectory was not linear. I went to a small liberal arts college, Carleton College in Minnesota, which is in the middle of, actually, it's very similar to Finland in a lot of ways. But I was a math major, and so directly after college, I was doing computer programming, analyzing data, and I realized I was more interested in the people behind the numbers, and moved to Sweden actually for a variety of reasons. But at the time I went to Sweden, I was taking Swedish as second language classes, and in my classes there were all refugees from a variety of countries, and so I became familiar with their stories, and I thought, aha, this is what I want to work on. So I returned to the United States and began working with refugees in our country, but I realized I didn't have the skills, so I returned to school to get more skills in social work at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And after that, I worked in the social services with a variety of children and families, but all children and families who were in very vulnerable, at-risk situations. At that time, I realized that there was a huge disconnect between what we do in practice and what we do in research or in university. And I thought I could be that translator, bring these two lines of thinking, lines of knowledge together. And in that way, I felt we could help support families and individuals better. So I returned to school to get my PhD at that point. Mass incarceration was a huge issue in the United States. We have incarcerated a lot of people. So I started focusing on that research. And from there, I started doing research, and now I'm working with programs, the prisons, NGOs in the community to develop programs. But I'm doing that work as a professor at a university. First, I was at Columbia University in New York, and now I'm at the University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon. So I've kind of hopped all over the United States, from small colleges to big private universities and to now a big public university.
That is very nice to know. Also, it's also actually possible to change, because previously when we introduced graduate applicants, actually in the US, it's possible to change at the grad school stage, like master's degrees, but even doctoral degrees, like sometimes maybe MA students, they really go to a more slightly technical, but of course there is still technical requirement, but still there are always ways and doors can still be open. And actually, let's move to like today's, I have some questions, and I'm sure also applicants have some questions. As professors, can you share, now we will get all the insider tips, like what's to consider, like if I want to apply for a master or doctoral degree in the US, like anything very specific for you as a professor that a must?
Well, I'll jump in. I serve on the application review committees for both the master level as well as the doctoral level at my university. The master's degree tends to, in the social sciences, tends to be for those people who, first of all, it opens up career opportunities in the United States, and as I understand it does here as well in Finland. And that's definitely true in US. You gain new skills, new connections, you sort of develop a sense of what direction you want to go. However, I will say, and this may be different from Finland, that for most master's degree in social sciences, you do have to pay tuition. And unless you have funding from your home country, you'll have to pay tuition in addition to your accommodations and such. So, but it's a great experience. We have a 1-year master's, which is a master's of art, as well as a 2-year master's, which is called a master's of science. And Master of Science tends to focus more on research than the Master of Arts. Master of Arts is more for people who want to go into practice. The PhD in my fields, which are prevention science, social work, and counseling psychology, tend to be more research focused at my school. And so in addition to learning those counseling skills, you also get a good grounding on research skills, both quantitative as well as qualitative. And that degree is more for those people who want to go into university teaching, into academia, into research, or in the sciences, it's for people who want to go in high-level industry. For the doctoral schools, for the doctoral programs, if you're accepted into the program, your tuition will be covered, as well as you will get a part-time stipend for it's called a GE, a graduate employment opportunity. So you'll get an opportunity to work part-time, either as a teaching assistant or research assistant, have your tuition covered. It's a longer degree program. It is also more competitive. So I think that sort of differentiates the two. What we're looking for, and I'll be interested to hear what Will looks for, but we will look at your resume or CV, see what your background is, what your education has been. There will be a personal statement that you'll need to talk about yourself, what directions you want to go, what your interests are, what your past background has been. And then, of course, we'll look at your transcript from the university. And we have accepted people from all over the world before. So sometimes there's a little translation that has to happen between transcripts. But most of all, we want to see that passion, that interest in the program. For the doctoral degree, actually for master, well, for the doctoral degree, we'll want to see experience. So it's a counseling degree. So if you have experience in counseling, or for the prevention science degree, if you have experience working with agencies that are preventing problems, you'll be of high interest. But I'm going to stop there because I know Will and I are kind of in different fields. I'm more in the social sciences, and Will is more in the hard sciences. And I'll check the chat as Will is talking.
Yeah, thanks, Jean. So there are some similarities between the programs. So I don't really do much of anything with the application process at all. I can get involved with that if there's a specific student who I know is applying that I want to work with me. But in general, I'm pretty hands-off with application. That's handled by a different person. That said, though, it varies wildly from university to university and even department to department. Other departments, even within the School of Engineering at KU, handle applications very differently. So I don't have much view on how you get accepted. I'm more on the back end of that. Once you are accepted in the program, we offer funding for students. And so we do have some unfunded programs. At the master's level, you can do a coursework only master's degree in engineering, which is usually a year and a half. Some people say you can do it in about a year, but that's a lot of classes to take in 1 year. But if you go down that path for a master's, you are paying your own tuition. The funding opportunities occur when you're involved with research. And so at least in my field, that is tied to external funding. So I write external proposals from funding agencies, the National Science Foundation, the Transportation Department of US DOT, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, whatever group is funding the type of work that I'm doing. And then my research group functions kind of like a small business where my graduate students are my employees. They're doing the work. We have deadlines that have to be met, contractual deadlines, reporting guidelines, and we have deliverables that we have to provide. And so I don't have many students that come in and say, hey, I'm really excited about this topic and I want this to be the focus of my thesis. It's more along the lines of, this person's interested in the type of work that I typically do, and I've got a project that aligns with what they're excited about, and I can find a way to make those things work together. But it's fairly rare that a student will come in with an idea that they want to go down a path on their own for research. That would happen if you have some type of external funding source, like a Fulbright grant, then that can happen. But I typically, because things are tight on external funding, I typically will even use students who come to me with external funding on our funded research projects, because then we can kind of combine our resources there and make things work a little bit better. In terms of the right match, I'm looking for someone who gets excited about what we're doing. In terms of you looking at a school, you need to think about why you're going to school. I have a lot of people who reach out to me and say they want a PhD, and I ask why. That's a 4 to sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8 year commitment that takes a lot of work, and in some cases can actually limit your job opportunities if you don't want to work in a specific field in academia, high level analysis, forensic engineering. And so there has to be some real motivation there. And if it's just, oh, well, I don't really want to go to work yet, I want to delay going into the real world, that's not a really good reason to get a PhD. If someone is reaching out to me and saying, hey, I really want to study tsunami effects on wooden structures, and they're telling me that they want to work with me for that, but I don't do that type of work, it's not related to anything I do, even though I might find it interesting, that's not going to be a good fit, because it's not something that I can put time and effort into, and I'm not going to be able to help a student with that. So the program has to fit. There are specific emphases of programs around the country. If you want to be a railway engineer, you go to a school that has very specific railway research focus and coursework focus. But if you want to learn how to design railway bridges, at the University of Kansas, we don't have a lot of research funded by the rail industry focusing on rail design. They have specific problems that they face that are different than other types of structures. And so you need to be reaching out to and looking for universities that fit your interests, and then the people that you're reaching out to also should align with their interests, should align with yours.
Actually, even though you say you do not handle admission, but I would say both of your comments really complement our whole today's program, because like Jean actually touched base on, we have mentioned about like people really should not just discriminate the program based on the name. You should really check the course, because a name does not tell you everything. Oh, this means a coursework, but this means more like career-oriented. I'm making things up, but you know what I mean. And so like really doing proper research is so important, but so is like, besides degree students, also like the same principle applies on visiting student researcher. You can also see there are many factors really affecting the admission process, even for visiting student researcher, whether you can get into a group or not, because it's not only about money, even though you talk about how it's functioned, that's you have deliverables, you have to send it, show it, but it's also about the whole alignment, like from the school to the department and to that particular principal investigator or professors, like what are they really looking into and researching right now. So but then I also noticed that like both of you have mentioned the very important, and which we have also highlighted earlier, passion and motivation, and why it's very important to include into your application. Otherwise, like professor like, nah, maybe that person is not particularly interested in this field. So this is somehow, because this is a big endeavor, like a master's degree, yes, but also like a PhD, definitely yes, because it's a huge chunk of time. And now I'm a little bit curious about, since we do not have so much time left, but and also somehow like our previous, in our previous discussion with Fulbrighters, they also mentioned the student and professors relationships are quite different in the US. Like, can you describe a little bit, like, and how should, and also for, well, actually 2 stages. The application stage, is it okay if I send a professor an email to ask? And then after being admitted, like during the study stage, like how can a professor, there's office hour, like is there a support for students? So yeah, twofold questions.
So I can go first on this one. So it's in terms of reaching out to faculty, absolutely you should reach out to faculty. Now, I say that when students reach out to me, the first thing I do, if they look promising in an email, is I'll say, have they applied? And if they haven't applied, and I don't really know what their background is, I don't have their CV, I don't have anything, I don't know if they're even admittable, I'm not going to spend time talking to them. And so the very first thing I do is say, hey, if you're interested in coming to my university, you need to apply to my program first. Once you've applied, then I'm happy to talk to you. If you've applied and you've been accepted, then we can have more talks about the details of what your interests are, what your passions are. Do they align with mine? Are we going to be able to work together? What opportunities exist? So I'm gonna kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth here. Like I get a lot of emails where people are really, really pushy, asking for funding and information. So don't be rude, but you kind of have to be a little pushy. Maybe that's not the right word, but you have to be persistent. I get hundreds of emails every week from students all around the world asking about funding. And most of them have not applied. Most of them probably are not admissible to the university. And so it's tough to weed through that. And I get behind in my emails and I miss things. So once at least the way it works at my university, once you're accepted into the program, absolutely reach out to people, talk to people. On the other side, the relationship with faculty. So Ling, you mentioned office hours. That's kind of the relationship on the like teacher pupil side. You know, if you're in my class, I want you coming to my office. I want you in my office. I want to be talking with you. I want you asking questions. If you're lost in my class and I have no idea you're lost until it gets to the final exam, that's a problem for everybody. So yeah, we have office hours. Now, just like anything else, everybody's different. Some people are more approachable than others, but I always encourage students to come to my office hours. And I actually give extra credit in my undergraduate classes, not in my graduate classes, but I give extra credit to students in the first 2 or 3 weeks of class, depending on how big my classes are, if they will come to my office, to know where my office is, to sit in my office and see that it's not intimidating, it's not scary to talk with me. On the graduate side, when you're doing research for me, I said it's like a small business, but I also view my grad students kind of like a family. And maybe that's a cliched thing, but all of my graduate students have been to my house. They know my wife, they know my kids. We have cookouts together. We have fun. We travel to conferences together. We work hard, but we have a good time as well. One of the things that stresses me out the most about my job is when I make a commitment to a student to fund them, that I'm going to fund them. I'm going to follow through with that. And so sometimes funding falls through, projects get canceled or cut short, or the funding doesn't work out the way we thought it was. But I really view my research group as an important thing. And I try to really take care of my students. And when I make a commitment, I stick with that commitment. So, I want people that are technically capable, that are hard workers, that are aligned in terms of their interests and passions. But we need to get along personally too. And having a good attitude is huge. Something we say a lot when we're evaluating students is that attitude is often more important than aptitude. I can teach you the technical side of things, but I can't teach you to have a good attitude. So I kind of went on a tangent there, but yeah, that's how I would answer those questions.
Yeah, and I can build on what Will said. So I do want to come back a little bit to the application and personal statement, because I know that this is can be a hard thing for people growing up in Finland to do, but it is important. It's important to brag in your personal statement. You really need to. I think you can't be modest. You have to say, these are my accomplishments. I've done really well here, and just be quite honest, because everyone else will be talking about their strengths. And I know sometimes that's not, it feels uncomfortable sometimes for people from Finland to do that, is what I've observed. So I do want to just throw that out. I, like Will, I get lots and lots of emails from people, and I simply cannot answer all of the emails and such prior to application. After you have applied, and you can send me an email saying that you've applied, then I can go in and I'll look at your CV, I'll look at your match, I'll look at your interests, and then we can have a conversation. And I actually, we have interviews with all the people who have applied before they get in. So it's an opportunity for you to ask questions of me and for me to ask questions of you and really see if it's a match. In terms of interacting with students, I have what I call a lab. So my lab consists of both master's and doctoral students who are doing research with me, who are interested in the topics that I am. So again, I focus on incarceration. I look at how to support people who are in prison, how to prevent youth who are having troubles, how to prevent incarceration or negative outcomes, how to promote positive behavior. So all the people in my lab are interested in those topics. So we do a variety. I think we have 7 different projects going on that work on different elements of that. I do focus a lot on parents and families, how to support children and families who have an incarcerated family member. So we meet weekly. At that time, it's an opportunity for me to meet people, talk about issues. I think the idea of family that Will mentioned is the same with me. We do kind of become a family away from home. We get together, have gatherings, celebrate babies. I've had like 30 people have babies in the last year that we celebrate, as well as work hard. And then as an advisor, I do talk with my students a lot about what are your goals. So if your goals are to work in the community as a practitioner, then I will help guide you and mentor you in the direction that would be most useful for you, what courses you should take, what experiences you should try to get. If you want to go into academia, into the college level teaching, I might steer you a different way, because in that track, it's important to write papers and get research funding and such. So depending what your goals are, I'm there as an advisor to help guide you. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Wow, thank you very much. How you illustrate your experience in your research group and lab, I think it's actually really shows the Finnish students the study culture, the research culture, and also the US culture in general. Like, of course, we are talking about very technical, like, or should I send an email to you, or like, how can I get admitted? But then on the other hand, we also get to know, like, it's different, because what our in our previous discussion as well, our Finnish Fulbrighters also notice how different the relationship is, and it's basically forms or molds how their US experiences as well, because of the close-knittedness of the research group. This is really nice, thank you. Now the audience, well, we have a chance for like asking professors questions. So any person from the audience would like to ask, you can raise your hand and then you can unmute yourself. Is there anything particular? Right now, yes, there's Juho Rasa. you should be able to unmute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for organizing this event. My name is Juho Rasa, and I have a question for Dr. Collins and Dr. Kjellstrand. So you might be familiar with the fact that in Finland it is very common to complete a master's degree in addition to a bachelor's degree. Very few people only complete a bachelor's degree, but they choose to pursue master's studies directly after earning their bachelor's degree. So my question to you is that I am interested in graduate studies in the US, but if I have already completed a master's degree in Finland, will that have a positive impact on my graduate application or a negative impact on my graduate application, or will it have an impact at all, or will the admissions officers only look at my bachelor's degree? Thank you very much.
I'm happy to answer that. I think it depends what your master's degree is in and how it's related to, if you're thinking of applying to a doctoral degree, if it's related to the doctoral degree. We do have people apply for the counseling degree, for instance, with a master's in counseling. That's very strong. That's we honor it, we see it. It's a strength in your application. If it was a master's degree in forestry and you're applying to counseling, it would not be meaningful for us, other than it would show that you have the wherewithal to complete a master's. So in that sense, it would be helpful. I don't think it would ever hurt, but if it's a master's degree in the topic you're going into, that will be very helpful. And you may even be able to get some course credit for that master's. Will, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I can't imagine a scenario where it would ever hurt you having a master's degree, even if you're applying for another master's degree, which is something that happens fairly commonly in my field. People will get a master's degree wherever they're coming from, and they come into KU as a PhD student very often, and then get there and decide, oh, this isn't really what I want. It's not what I want for my career. And they actually switch then to a master's program. And it's beneficial then for them to get a master's in the US, because applying for jobs with a US degree versus the international degree is helpful. And so if you've got a master's, I think whether you're applying for another master's or a PhD program, I don't think it is ever something that's going to hurt you.
Thank you. Okay, I see there's another hand.
We have one question in the chat.
Okay, please.
Should we take that?
Yes.
It's, if you have already been to the US university and you know some professors there, could you send an email in advance mentioning about the Fulbright opportunity?
Yes, that's an excellent. And I was going to say that any connection you have. So for instance, if you have a connection from being in a university, that's a different game. It is very good to reach out. I would say if you have any connections to Fulbright, so Will and I both have Fulbrights, we're going to be extra receptive and interested in people who are applying with Fulbright and more supportive of you. So I think any connections you have, it is very fine to reach out to the professors, especially past professors. I think that's an excellent idea.
Let's take, I see Sarah has her hands up. Hold on a second, I'll ask her to unmute.
Hi, thank you so much for all of your information. And I had one question for Dr. Collins. So specifically for like engineering master degrees, how does it work in the US? Is it very similar to the ones in Europe? And like, is it more common to have like an industrial placement as a part of the master's, or do like a master's thesis based on research? Thank you.
So our master's program is pretty typical from what I've seen at other universities and colleagues around the US. We typically, a master's program is going to be 30 credit hours. And so if it's a coursework only program, that means you're taking 10 courses, because each graduate course is typically 3 credit hours. When you do a research option, it's a thesis option, then you only take 24 credit hours, so 8 courses, and then the other 6 credits are accounted for in your research. There's not typically an industry placement. If you're doing coursework only and you're not taking classes in the summertime, then people typically do get internships. But if you're doing research, that's year round, and I'm paying you in the summertime, you're working in the research group. I have had a few students who get summer internships just to try to help get their foot in the door with the company. But usually that's not a very good thing from the research perspective, because it slows things down. But absolutely, students who are doing coursework only, internships are absolutely encouraged, because it does help you, get your foot in the door with an engineering firm in the US.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our session is coming to an end. And first of all, I would like to thank you, Will and Jean, for your sharing, because all your experience and insights are actually very helpful and have shed lights onto the study experience or research experience in the US, because it's really new and different from Finland. So this is very helpful. And would it be possible if me and Karo, we would still stay for a while to go through maybe how Finnish students can get in touch with our current Fulbrighters? So is it possible, like if any applicants, if they have questions, they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, that's fine. And Ling, I can put my email in the chat box if that would be helpful.
Thank you very much for your generosity to help and share. And I understand your family commitment, so me and Karo will stay here for like 5 to 10 more minutes, but if you need to go, we understand you will need to go as well. So thank you very much for your sharing. And you, audience, you can see Jean's email in the chat over there. So now we will resume to today's, we will just a few more minutes about the practicality, because I really encourage all of you to get in touch with Fulbrighters, either current Fulbrighters in Finland or even abroad, but also we have outreach ambassadors who are Fulbright alumni, and they have had experiences in the US, and they are here to share experience. So you can check these websites on check this webpage on our websites, and maybe you will be able to get to know more about the study culture or even the institution or something about the research topic in your field. So this can be helpful. We encourage you to do so. And also for just more Fulbright experience, and get to know and hear our US grantees sharing their research topics in our Fulbright forum. One is actually tomorrow, and there are more coming throughout March, April, May. So you're all welcome to join, and we will share the link in the follow-up email. And of course, last but not least, always check our social media, because over there you can get to know about our grantees experiences, but also the deadlines or when application is open, especially for the programs we mentioned earlier, which will be open in the fall. And of course, join our newsletter, then for sure you'll get everything in your inbox. And if you have any questions, Carolina and I can stay here for a few more minutes to answer your questions. So, but also these are our contacts, so you can find us as well if you are not able to now or anyway, we will then also like answer all the questions in written form as well. So any questions from the audience? Okay, it seems
There's
like
Sarah. Does Sarah have a question?
Yes, please. Could I ask a few questions? So first question was that, is it possible to apply for the Fulbright master's program if you have completed your bachelor abroad?
Yeah, it is possible. It doesn't make any difference to us.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is, so in terms of like the time it takes for the Fulbright, like from your bachelor's graduation to the master's starting, if you get into the Fulbright program. So is it so that you kind of have a year in between? So that like you would apply this spring for
Yeah.
a master that starts in 2024, or how
Yeah.
does that work?
Yeah. If you are in that stage kind of your studies, some people have been working after the bachelor's degree and then they apply for a master's in the US. But if you are doing your bachelor's degree now, so then you would typically have a 1 year there between, because you need to have completed your bachelor's degree before the Fulbright application ends, and that's in May, and that is for the academic year 24-25.
Thank you so much. And finally, also, so when does the selection get informed? And do you kind of apply to the master programs through the Fulbright if you get accepted? Like, so during that 1 year, you do all the applications, or?
Yeah, so in September, mid-September, you'll find out about the selection results. And if you're in the program, then starts the process of applying to US universities. And we highly recommend that you participate in the placement service that we described earlier today in the session, where you are given help in finding those suitable universities, and also universities that match with your kind of financial situation, and then you get help in the university application process as well.
Thank you so much for all the answers.
Thank you for your questions.
there is one more hand up.
Larry, please go
Yes.
ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. This is just, a follow-up to Sarah's question, the last question, just to be more clear. So the program works such that you first apply to the Fulbright program, and then when you are selected, then you start with the application from the university side. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly. That's the order.
Okay. Also, maybe some one question probably might not be so much necessary, but I probably have to ask. I know that one of the prerequisites, or maybe the requirement, is that you must be a Finnish citizen. For example, if you're applying for the this 1 year or maybe 6 months, is it only on the Finnish citizen, or you must be for example, whether language, fluency in language and all that actually? Okay.
Yeah, no, in kind of language requirements, it's only the citizenship requirement that we have in these graduate programs that we've been talking about today.
Okay.
We have few programs which doesn't have any citizenship requirement, kind of shorter-term travel grant and this type of short-term professional development opportunity. But the ones that we talked today about for graduate studies, those are for Finnish citizens, but no language requirements.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. Do you have a place where one can see maybe the full list of probably beneficiaries. So I try to
Yes.
check. Of course, I have seen majority, or at least all of them, have been, I mean, full Finns. Let me just put it that way.
Yes.
It could be that international or people of different background who have later become Finns or maybe were born here, having been interested in applying, or there might be some other reasons why we haven't seen awardees of those people. So it will be interesting if we have even one, maybe where one can even contact and probably get some tidbits also, how the person was successful or something that.
Yeah, sorry, now, so I didn't understand. Did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I was just saying that I try to go through the list of awardees, maybe at least those who which have been published on your site. But,
of the grantees.
Yes, the grantees.
Right.
And I mean, for some reason, I have seen, let's say, full Finns. And I kind of haven't seen people of, let's say, this 50-50 or that kind of a thing. So that's why I was asking whether it's the requirement actually also is based on the, okay, you must be a, I mean, full Finn. Let me put it.
No.
Okay.
No, it's only the citizenship is in this program, so that you go on this specific visa to the US, and as this is a cultural program, so it has this citizenship requirement.
Yeah.
But that's all. We welcome everyone to apply and wish to have like the whole Finnish society represented in our programs. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, right now I do not see any hands up. So if there is
Sarah has one question.
Okay.
Just one last question. So the grant would be just for 1 year. So if the master program happens to be 1.5 years, is the rest self-funded in that case?
There is a renewal grant that you can also apply for from our foundation. The amount is typically clearly lower than the first year award, but that's something that you can also then apply. And if we talk about, for instance, the Fulbright award sponsored by Eidman Foundation, that is a 2-year award. But the others that we mentioned today are 1 year, plus the opportunity to apply for renewal.
And also the grants program does not cover by no means like the whole program in any sense. So it's always very important that applicants have a really thorough funding plan for the entire degree studies, like not only for 1 year, but also for the entire studies and other resources in Finland or whatever they can come up with as well. That's an important point.
Yeah, or then apply to those type of US institutions that also provide funding, so that you can put together your funding package with these different sources.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, it seems like there's no question from the chats and no one has hands up. So we thank you all for participating in this event, and we will send you a follow-up email with the recording uploaded to the web page. And we wish you all a pleasant week. Thank you very much.
We hope to see all of your applications in the upcoming after the upcoming deadlines. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you and goodbye.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.